the handshake and the hot cup of coffee. It sounds like a rather strange analogy when you're talking about social media, but in a lot of ways, social media is nothing more than just human interaction. And how social media is now putting itself into the limelight of business, we're suddenly faced with a situation where we not only need to look at how our personal lives interact with others over social media, but we also have to look how our businesses and in turn our brands interact on social media. And the relationships that social media presents to us is unlike anything most people have dealt with when they're working on their computer. That it's much more like that personal relationship you share with your friends and colleagues than it is simply by exchanging emails. So keeping that in mind, when you look at the adventure of social media, especially in a business setting, you want to keep that relationship as personal and as comfortable as possible. A little bit for those who don't know, my company SignalFire specializes in social media interaction. We also do web development, we also do branding. Over the last about 8 months or so, we've been working with Eagle Technology, specifically Matt and Amanda, in working on getting the social media presence established, as well as tying it in with all the rest of the other marketing efforts that are currently evolving. But the question comes in is, what is social media? How is it used? Is it helpful really to a business? And to answer that, it's a matter of keeping in mind how relationships for businesses and brands are changing very rapidly over the last 3-4 years with the advent of social media. It's become a lot more of a personal relationship. The expression that most people said with networking events, that it's a big cocktail party. It's no place for wallflowers. And that's still very much true with social media. Keeping that larger party, more like cocktail party, networking party, not keg stand party, mindset is important when you're looking at developing relationships in social media. And that's something that, as we look at your own presence in social media, what relationships are you forming? There's an expression we use: everything has a brand and everybody is a brand. And that's something that roars very powerfully to life in social media. That you as a person interacting with people on social media are just as much a brand as Pepsi. Just as much a brand as Johnson Controls. And keeping that mindset in the forefront of how you conduct yourself also comes desperately to life when you're saying, okay, how am I holding myself as a member of this organization, a part of Eagle's brand? And as we look at some of the different platforms today, we're going to talk about a little bit on the concept of how do you represent your brand well, but also how do you represent yourself well? Because you are just as an important critical element of social media and the brand as marketing material, as everything else with it. And looking at that from the standpoint of LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, those are all things that come into play as we look at it. One of the biggest advantages social media has is the concept of sharing knowledge. And one of the things that is probably so crucial to successful presence in social media is that concept of sharing knowledge, of being helpful, expressing your opinions, sharing ideas. That interaction is actually something that's more important than holding yourself out as, oh, buy this software package, $29.95. Buy one, we'll send you two. That kind of mindset is not what's going to succeed in social media. Holding yourself out as a resource and holding yourself out as a help is what's going to make people value your thoughts and your insights in a social media realm. Bottom line, you want to be of value on social media. And that's something that, as we go through looking at this, that in the end, we want to make sure that your demonstrated value and your perceived value far exceed any notion of cost. Great example, Steve Stratton is a very dynamic, fun social media speaker, and he had a fun little quip saying that he took with his girlfriend a trip down to Napa Valley. He lives in Vancouver. Driving down there, and he, like me, know absolutely nothing about wine. First place he stopped, said, "Hey, I don't know anything. Where can I go? I'm looking to have a good afternoon." The guy laid out a map, said, "Oh, you should go to this winery, and all this," and mapped him an entire route out. He, great, thank you. Spent the day, things like that, but he made sure at the end of that day he came back to that same vineyard and he bought an entire case of wine because he was a help, because the guy behind the counter was an important resource and a value. And in the end, one of the fastest trends right now in purchasing is value. How are you of value to your customers, potential customers, and past customers? And so as we're talking about this, we start talking about, well, we have all these customers, we have all of these potential contacts out there, but we have some in North America, we have some in Europe, we have some in South America, the Middle East is booming. What does it mean? Bottom line, it means that geography is becoming less and less of an issue, especially in social media realms. We like to say it's becoming an age where there's brands without borders, and that geographic communities are being replaced with interest communities. People who are held together by the concept of shared interests, shared passions, shared goals. It doesn't matter if someone's in Cincinnati, Ohio, and someone else is in Las Vegas, Nevada. If they both share a passion for Harley-Davidson motorcycles, they're probably reading the same blogs, they're probably following the same people on Twitter, they're probably reading the same magazines. And that bond right there becomes as important of a community as, saying, Milwaukee. This is having huge impacts on the concept of advertising. Because you look at that, you look at someone in Cincinnati, Ohio, and you look at someone in Las Vegas, Nevada. If you were looking at traditional ad purchases, how in God's name would you reach them both? They're not listening to the same radio stations, they're not watching the same television stations. More than likely, outside probably a couple trade magazines, they're probably not reading the same material. But in online, social media, they might as well be next door neighbors. And so looking at how social media then turns and starts applying itself to business, there are 3 critical rules with social media. You gotta listen, you gotta respond, and above all else, be helpful. When I say listening, what does that mean? Listening, a very wise man once told me that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, that we should listen twice as much as we speak. Same rule and same concept applies in social media. Beautiful part about the tools available in social media today give you the ability to listen to incredibly huge conversations and be able to listen for key words, listen for key phrases, find out who's talking about what groups are active in what. And by listening, sometimes called lurking, you can find out that critical information. Who are the key players? Key players in interest communities may not be key players in industry. For example, how many of you have kids? When you, I know some of you have grown kids, but you look at buying strollers. Go on to Target's website, scroll down. Ooh, I like that stroller. Click on it. What do people look at first? They're going to look at customer reviews. You see that TV that you like on Best Buy's website. You're going to scroll down, look at the reviews. And suddenly, and this happened with Greco, that they had an entire stroller product line get sunk by a bad review from a housewife in central Iowa. Now, from a marketing standpoint, does this person really matter to a marketing department? Yeah, they're in the target demographic. Yeah, they're a person they're looking to target to. But in terms of influence, that influence carries all. Because how many people going through Target's website, looking at that stroller, reading that review that says, ah, I've got 2 kids too. Ooh, it doesn't turn well? Well, that's not going to work when I'm at the county fair, when I'm at the state fair, when I'm hiking. Suddenly, that importance of listening comes into play. So you, over social media, can look to see those conversations, see who the key players are, and start becoming part of the community. Another rather vocal and often crass social media speaker by the name of Gary Vaynerchuk has a very, very good statement. It's crass, so forgive me. Brands have to get in the trenches, bitches. You have to jump down into the foxhole, shoulder to shoulder, with the people in the interest community. Businesses and brands are no longer on high with we give you advertising. We will tell you what is good. Those days are long gone. People want to interact with the brand. But interacting also means responding. And responding is the simple act of, hey, I have a problem. Oh yeah, how can I help? Probably one of the best success stories of this is Southwest Airlines. Fantastic story. I met with a reporter from Chicago yesterday, and he regaled the story of standing in line at Midway Airport. And if you've ever been to Midway Airport, you're always standing in line. And he was standing in line waiting to check in Southwest lines, and he threw a tweet out, Southwest, what's going on? I've been in this line an hour. Within 10 minutes, 3 or 4 checkout people came in to fill in empty stations, and he got a tweet back from Southwest, thanks for letting us know, we passed it on. Now look at the level of customer service Southwest is able to deliver simply because they were listening. They saw that, hey, we're going to respond. Thanks for letting us know about this. We're going to solve the problem. That kind of responsiveness is what makes social media such an important platform for a brand to be listening in and then responding. And one of the biggest concerns that so many people have is, oh my goodness, what if someone says something bad about us? Well, that's good too. Because if someone says something bad about you, it gives you the opportunity to respond. Example, someone on TripAdvisor, this restaurant stunk. Bad service, cold food. I'll never go back. Restaurant owners have the ability to log in, say, hey, I'm sorry you had such a bad experience. Why don't you, here's my email address, contact me, and next time you come in, we can get you a free meal. They listened, they responded, they were helpful. And so the person going down reading those reviews, oh, they had a bad meal. They heard it, apologized, and they acted to correct the issue. Oh, well, maybe that was a fluke. And suddenly it becomes, that negative press becomes an opportunity to demonstrate value, to be a help. And when we talk about being helpful, it's something to remember, especially as you're looking at things like conversations in LinkedIn, over Twitter. Someone has a question. I know, Harry, we've talked about this on numerous occasions. Someone has a question about sustainability, posted on LinkedIn. And the first 20, 30 responses are, oh, you need to buy our product. Well, the people who posted that aren't listening. They're not really responding. They're selling. And sometimes selling isn't being helpful. And so that's where you get the situation. Turn around, answer the question. Show that you are listening. Show that this person's situation is important to you. Respond. Answer the question. And it becomes a situation where suddenly now you have value. Some fast, quick tips about social media. And this is something that so many people lose sight of, so many brands lose sight of. It's not about you. If you're running your own personal Twitter account, your own Facebook account, yeah, that is about you. But when you're a business or in a business environment and you're on social media, it has absolutely nothing to do with you. You've got to put that customer first. You've got to put that situation first. I heard you're having a problem. I'm here to help. Here's the answer to your question. You're listening, you're responding, you're being helpful. Suddenly now, just like that guy who gave the example of all the vineyards to travel in Napa Valley, suddenly there's value. And when you start holding yourself out there as valuable, you become a resource. And when people are in need, they check their resources. And so, it's not about you. Answer the questions. And probably one of the biggest things that, especially when you start talking about, how do I conduct myself on Twitter? You're not talking to an audience. It's a conversation. People think that, oh, you have such a huge audience on the internet. No. You're not up here. You're in the trenches. You don't have an audience. You have your buddy next to you in the trench. And that is an important mentality to keep in mind as you're looking at this as a business tool. That you're shoulder to shoulder with someone. You're there with them. Your compadres, your partners. That demonstrates value. That is what carries it across. And you'll run into situations, what do I do? I don't know. When in doubt, engage. Show that you're listening. Hey, I don't have the answer to this right now. Sometimes even, hey, I know a guy. Is a perfectly good answer. Let me find some information and get back to you. Show that their situation has importance. And silence is probably the biggest enemy that you have. When we talk about the hug, the handshake, and the hot cup of coffee, what specifically does that mean? In the end, we'll talk about 3 of the major platforms with social media: Facebook, the hug; Twitter, the handshake; and LinkedIn, the hot cup of coffee. And it's important to keep that analogy in mind because social media isn't everything. Just like a toolbox isn't always full of screwdrivers, different social media platforms have different functions and different reasons to be. And understanding how each one works means you can use them effectively. You can't build a house with just a hammer. Knock one down, but you can't build one. The hug, Facebook. Keeping business, probably one of the big challenges a lot of, especially in small businesses, that they run into is that, hey, I'm going to take all my business friends and make them my personal friends, just like in the article, on Facebook. Well, you know what? All of your business friends may not want to see those pictures of Aunt Marge spilling gravy on her at Thanksgiving. Just saying. Keeping business, and keeping personal is actually sometimes a good thing, but again, there's exceptions. But understand that never put anything online that you don't want your best sales lead to see. Because in the end, cuts heal, bones mend, but Google is forever. Google indexes and stores all tweets, Facebook posts, Flickr. Yeah, it's disastrous if you ever try to go job hunting. Those pictures from the beer bilge that you built in college, yeah, they could come up. So that's something to keep in mind as you're looking with your Facebook and all the other materials, that keep business and keep personal. And that's not to say don't be personable in business, but sometimes having that little bit of separation is important. Doesn't mean don't be authentic, but just know when to say when. Probably Facebook currently has just north of 600 million users. The average user is a woman in her mid to late 40s who checks it on average 4 to 6 times a day. For businesses, the ability to reach into that stream and talk about it and engage with them is hugely powerful. But the pitfall with Facebook is it's one generation deep. You can connect to those people that you're connected to, but in the end, it doesn't go past that. Single generation sphere of influence. I've just let all of our fans or followers know about such and such conference. Those people have a hard time sharing it out to the people they know. So you keep having this brick wall surrounding Facebook, where Facebook, fantastic referral engine, fantastic ability to interact and engage, to share your brand, but it's that one generation deep. And when we look at it, saying, well, if it's only one generation deep, what's the point? What's the point of sharing that information? And we talk a little bit about the concept of speed versus velocity. Going back to high school physics. I'm running 55 miles an hour in place. Sure, I might be legs pumping at 55 miles an hour. It'd be a hell of a lot thinner. But I'm not going anywhere. That velocity is direction, directionality. I'm going 55 miles an hour south. Hey, now I'm going somewhere. And the same thing applies when you're looking at social media. Give them directionality. Give them somewhere to go. social media is a vehicle, not a destination. You want to take them into that branded environment. And probably the most important tool to your social media is your website. And that's something, as you look, you have all of these links, all of these other sites that in the end you want them all to start funneling. You want them back at your website. Whether it's from Facebook, from Twitter, from LinkedIn, from any of these other sources, in the end you want to bring them back home. You want to put them in that branded environment that all of a sudden says, hey, there's value beyond the question that I just got answered. They do this too. Don't leave them on Facebook. Bring them home. With the great joke a lot of times is, what's the business use of Twitter? And that's probably one of the hardest things for people, a lot of people to get their head around, is what's the point? The point is, it's not about talking, it's about listening. There are plenty of talkers out on Twitter. Someone has a question, they may tweet it out. Someone has a problem, they may tweet it out. Someone's griping about the line being too long in Southwest's check-in stand, they'll tweet it out. Twitter for business is not about broadcasting, it's about listening. It's about listening to the conversations. It's not a coincidence that Twitter's tagline is join the conversation. Because I can guarantee you, no matter what the topic, someone's talking about it on Twitter. Joining into that conversation becomes important. Not jumping in and saying, hey, bye. No, they're not going to listen. That's going to get tuned out. What's important is that listening, that responding, that being helpful. So when you look at Twitter, 190 million users, with over 60 million tweets a day. That's a lot of conversation. But like we said at the beginning, there are tools available, tools Matt and Amanda are already using that monitor those conversations, that can pick keywords out and say, anyone talking about sustainability, anybody talking about green building practices, intelligent buildings, anyone talking about RFID, all of that starts getting pulled in and pulled together. Saying what conversations can we participate in, what conversations can we demonstrate our value in. And by demonstrating your value there is where you start looking and saying, okay, the information I share with the people in that conversation isn't limited to just them. Other people are likely listening. And other people outside may jump in the conversation. So instead of saying, oh, it's just the people we're connected to on Facebook, you're looking at a situation where you're many generations deep in your conversation. Because an astute point you make or helpful information you share on Twitter suddenly may go beyond your couple hundred followers. It might get picked up and shared by someone having 1,000 followers, 2,500 followers. So that information can get shared out into a multi-generational sphere of influence that gets out and out and out further. You're helping more and more and more people. You're demonstrating your value out beyond simply just answering the question. And then that's indexed by Google. And so, looking at all that, bringing it home, saying, Twitter, it's kind of like the CB radios of old. Twitter doesn't work really well if you're just holding down the microphone, putting down the transmit button and talking and talking and talking and talking. It's going to be completely useless. Why? Because you don't take the time to lay off the transmit button and hear what everybody else is saying. Twitter, like I said, has a lot of questions for people. It's something, in the end, becomes a a very poignant listening post. But it's not the only one. The hot cup of coffee, LinkedIn. LinkedIn has been that on again, off again lover of social media. It's probably one of the most established social media platforms. Started out as a simple method for sharing your online resume, but has evolved quite mightily. It's evolved quite mightily around the concept of it's there to interact. It's there to share. It's not about necessarily, here I am, I only want people who I want to see me, I want to hide from everybody else. No, it's holding yourself out there as a personal, as well as an entire brand platform. You have the ability to dive into their whole answers section. Their whole answers area is the concept of just a public Q&A area. And that's something that I dare to say, challenge people to say, spend 15 minutes a day in LinkedIn Answers and start seeing how you interact. And in those 15 minutes a day, I can almost start guarantee you start doing that 15 minutes a day, you're gonna see results. You're gonna have that interaction. You're gonna be a help to people. Because in the end, in that 15 minutes, you're getting back, you're being helpful, you're answering questions, you're demonstrating value, and that value is translating directly to your brand. And in terms of generations, when I talk about sharing, shared generations is not necessarily connections that, hey, I'm going to use so-and-so to meet so-and-so. Yeah, that's helpful. But it builds that network of authenticity. That the people that are saying, hey, okay, I know Harry follows this guy over here, and okay, so I know who this person is. I'm not completely talking to a stranger. We're connected. How many of you, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon? That's what LinkedIn, the whole thing LinkedIn was based on. There's a lot coming down the pipe social media-wise. Some of it specific and could potentially be helpful in your environment, some of it not. Specifically, probably what's not, location-based social media, the whole concept of people sharing their location when they're checking in. You have Foursquare, Koala, Facebook Places. You have all these materials now that are sharing your location information, but it's also giving brands the ability to communicate and basically advertise into closed environments. Not necessarily incredibly specifically useful in your environment, but be aware of it, because people are using it very, very effectively. One of the very quickly growing areas is answer-based social media. LinkedIn Answers is a great example of this and a great platform. Like I said, it's worth spending 15 minutes a day. One of the newest ones is Quora. I'm maybe not even saying it right. When I say it's new, it's like within the last couple months new, but it's very quickly growing in popularity. Same kind of concept as LinkedIn Answers. People ask questions and get answers from people they deem as experts in their field. Probably one of the hottest topics in the area is sustainability. Loyalty and rewards or incentives, things like Facebook deals and Google Places. Again, not that you're going to be offering coupons to people who stop into your office, but be aware of it. Look at it and look at ways that it can potentially be a help to you or potentially be a help to your customers. So I know I ran a smidge long, so questions?
May I ask a
Oh,
question?
fire away.
How many people here have LinkedIn accounts?
We all do.
Everybody? Is that mandatory?
I asked them to.
It's highly recommended.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just curious, what's your goal for your LinkedIn account?
What was the question? I didn't hear you.
Sorry?
What was the
Pardon me?
question?
What's your goal, Gary? What's your goal for having a
for
LinkedIn
LinkedIn.
account?
I haven't gotten a full grasp on how to use it effectively just quite yet.
Oh my goodness,
person-
an honest man in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Yay! You're going to do well in sales. You're going to stand up.
I
and
try, but I haven't found an effective strategy to
Okay.
actually engage with anyone
Okay. All right.
where I can actually be of value. So,
Okay.
but this actually helps. It gives them much more vision on where to go now. Looking at 2011, so.
You didn't mention LinkedIn groups too, which is
Yeah, I was trying to clip it there at the end. LinkedIn groups, you have organizations of individuals, what originally started out as online reflections of established organizations, but has grown into LinkedIn interest communities. Just like I was speaking before about what are interest communities, that people are banding together. I mean, Milwaukee is a great example of a fake union. They called it Milwaukee Ad Workers Local 526 or something like that. But that whole concept holds true, that it's a group of individuals sharing ideas, sharing information, interacting, and using LinkedIn as a platform. They also have parroted that in Facebook and Twitter and then real life networking events and things like that. But the same concept holds true, that whole little islands of interest, so to speak, are there on LinkedIn. And it's a matter of sometimes hunting them and finding them. Some of them are public, some of them are by invite only. So sometimes it takes a little bit of hunting. But again, like I said, I mean, 15 minutes a day, and it's amazing the value you can start getting out of it. Go ahead.
Can I tell a story about
Please.
LinkedIn?
Please.
Okay. So I'm from the United Kingdom. So I belong to a couple of groups of British expats. And people ask the dumbest questions. They're living 4,000 miles from home, and their big issue apparently is they don't know where to buy good bacon. Because bacon is different in the UK to here. So I answered a question about where to buy good bacon. So it's like, import it yourself. So through this I started meeting other Brits. And there was a guy there who is working for a firm. And I actually opened the branch that he works in like a long, long time ago, when I was wrinkle-free. And so I asked him why he's in this group, because he lives in the UK and he's got kids here. And this conversation led to us connecting directly, and led to me getting a paid speaking gig in the United Kingdom, 45 minutes drive from my mum. So it's about building that relationship that eventually literally brings home the bacon. I mean, the question was about something really minor.
Yep.
Right.
Certainly not my specialty. It's not what I normally consult on.
It's that trifecta of good marketing: hustle, passion, and authenticity.
A good person asks you a simple question. Answer it.
Yep.
I don't know, when I was living in Wiltshire, I'd just go down to my local butcher and he'd make my American bacon.
Yeah, we can all make that kind of bacon. They just cut it differently. We don't need to have a discussion on bacon.
Fantastic.
on the web.
Why don't you just go to Newski's?
Well, that's what I thought.
Any other questions?
Good.
Fantastic.
I'd like to get a cup of coffee while Jackie's getting set up.
Do you have a remote control?